Hello, this is Katie. Welcome back to my channel. This is the very first Watercolor Wednesday, hopefully every Wednesday. So I'm going to be using the Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. I started with, I believe, a 24 set, I think. I think I just bought it on Amazon, and then I've bought singles here and there. I got some singles on Butterfly Reflections ink because she had a lot of them. There's also a blender, kind of like Copics. But I'm going to be using paintbrushes and water instead of the blender. So these are essentially watercolor markers. For Watercolor Wednesday, I'll be doing different types of watercolor, and there's many different types of ways you can watercolor. So we're going to start with these. I'm going to be watercoloring this image because he's so cute and I can use him on a birthday card. I just got this set, like somebody's D-stash on Etsy. I'm sure they don't make it anymore. It's very old. It's their kind of like old style, but I thought they were pretty cute. And so I'll be using the Celebrate one. And I'm going to be using the Strathmore Bristol Smooth paper. You can almost always get these at Michael's, like buy one, get one free. I would probably only buy them when that's the situation at Michael's. And you get a pretty good deal. The pages are very large, so I almost always cut them down into small pieces and use it like that. Then we'll be using VersaFine Onyx Black Pigment ink. This video is going at normal speed because I want to make sure I cover everything, and it also didn't end up being too long. I don't turn him into a card with you. I just paint the image or color it in with the markers and water. So I wanted to make sure I covered everything. So this ink is good with water and watercoloring, unlike Memento, which is more for Copics. Now there are other inks that can do both, Copic and water. It can handle that without bleeding. I just prefer this one. It is a pigment ink, and so in another Watercolor Wednesday, I also will cover... See how I've already smeared it? I will cover sealing this with clear embossing powder because it is a pigment ink, so it's sticky. So it will take embossing powder. You do want to de-static with like an embossing buddy your paper before you stamp it, obviously. So I'll go over that next time. You can seal it so you don't smear it. I've had the problem of smearing it with my hand, so you'll watch me be very careful around him, making sure I don't touch any part of the image while I'm coloring. But in another one, I will cover how I seal with clear embossing powder. I have videos in the past where I've done it too, but I want to cover it more often. And then it's kind of like painting in like a bordered area, which is kind of fun as well. So here we're just going to leave the ink as is and try not to touch it. And I'm using these two browns. I'll show you which markers. These are, they're numbered and they have names. I'm going to be blending them kind of like you would blend a Copic, but not the whole area. So I'm going to start with the dark and go along where the dark shading would be. And then do the same, kind of blend out from there with the second shade. And then we basically take that and spread it out with water. And I don't do this a whole lot, which is also why I wanted to kind of do Watercolor Wednesdays, because I need to do more watercoloring. I really enjoy it. And I think I figured out why. It's kind of like therapeutic for me. If you were a kid of the 90s, or a child of the 90s, or maybe before, you might remember the watercolor coloring books that had essentially like lines of paint, like dried up paint in there already for you. And then you just take a paintbrush and water and you can color it like I'm about to here. So what I'm doing essentially is lining down or putting down those colors, and then taking a brush with water to it and spreading them out, which is what I did when I was little. I would get a coloring book or one of these watercolor paint books at the store, and I would come home and do the entire thing and lay them all out on my floor and make my parents come look at my art show. So I think that's why I find this very soothing, because I used to do it. I've done it since I was little. So this one here with his tail, since it's so skinny, it's a little hard to kind of get the ink to draw out, or the the color. So I do end up just taking the lighter brown, making sure I'm not touching the image. I don't want to smear that ink. And just kind of filling in the rest of his tail with the light brown. You can just color with these. You don't even have to use the blender or any water or a paintbrush. You can just color and blend them with each other. I do love the look of watercolor, so I do prefer to use them this way, because when he's done, you can kind of see how it all comes together. Like how his face goes a little bit lighter there. If I had just used the light brown, I found that when I've tried to blend these just using them, the markers themselves, and filling in a whole image, it's very inky, and it's almost like it's too much color, and it can kind of gather in certain areas. So that's why just having it in a kind of a beginning spot and then spreading it out works out better than blending them with just each other. But you're welcome to use them however you want. For the confetti around him, I do end up using, obviously they're very, very tiny. I'll use like a red, a green, an orange, and a yellow, I think, just to fill them in, because it's just like a quick dab of color from the brush, just to give the confetti some color. There's really no space to blend it out with water. So you can color with these like normal, especially if it's a really small space, like the buttons on his overalls. I don't blend that out because it's just so small. With the pink, this is the lightest pink, I believe, that I have in that box. And I didn't want it to just be that straight pink. It was still a little too bright for the inside of his ears. And so I just did a little bit and blended that out with water and turned it into the shade that I wanted it to be. And then for his overalls, I'm taking kind of like a denim blue and going along where there might be like seam darkness. If any of you have seen a pair of jeans, you probably haven't in the last 6 months or so. Since we don't have to go anywhere. I haven't worn jeans in probably 10 years. I've worn yoga pants as pants for a very long time, probably 10 years, because I don't have any jeans that fit, and I wasn't getting any smaller. So if you remember what jeans look like, you probably remember that the seam is a little darker. So that's kind of like what I was going for. And then I just took the lighter blue and blended around it a little bit, still leaving myself room, even in those small areas, to blend out with water. So this, I'm going to use the bigger paintbrush of the two. I used my two smallest ones, but the bigger one, just because this is a little more area. And I want to make sure that I can spread it out quickly enough before what I'm spreading out actually dries. So then I'm just getting his little overall straps, and this ends up being plenty of ink to blend out both the dark and the light blue to where I'm happy with what his overalls look like. His little Chunky Mouse overalls. He's pretty cute. And then I'm just trying to make sure that the dark blue lines aren't too harsh. So this one, I'm just trying to blend that out a little bit more. And just like those coloring books, I've wondered if I could stamp an image and kind of place ink lines down like this, and then leave it to dry, like leave it out, and then come back to it another day and see if water still will spread out the ink. I have yet to try that, probably because I don't have any patience to wait for it, but I wonder if that would work. If any of you have done that, let me know. So I had started with what I thought was an orange, but it's actually called like bright yellow or something, it's like an orangey yellow, but I wanted orange to offset the blue. And then I just used the orange to fill in kind of random confetti pieces. I thought it had smudged something, so I was checking on that. And then one of the little streamers I'll fill in with orange. And then after that one, I'll go in with my green. And then on my red, you're going to see me take a pair of scissors to the tip. And I promise you, I was very careful. I recommend doing whatever you need to do to your art supplies as long as you think you know what you're doing and you understand the consequences if you don't know what you're doing. But the red had, these are very, very good markers, but the red did have a bristle that was sticking out at the end longer than any of my other markers that I've used this whole time, for this image at least. And so I needed to trim it off because it was carrying ink and it was causing me to, I kind of go outside the lines a little bit. When I color in the streamer with the red, it causes me to go outside the lines because there is that little, the piece it's kind of right there. It kind of makes your painting stream thicker. So I'm just going to take the EK Success scissors and just trim off the very, very end, which was plenty, to bring my marker brush tip back to normal. So again, if you think you can be super careful, feel free to fix any of your art supplies. And then I'm just going to finish filling in with yellow. And that will be it. I'll end up turning into a card soon. I want to let him dry fully. But yeah, so thank you for watching the first episode of Watercolor Wednesday, and I hope to do many more, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.